So good evening, everyone. Really happy to have you all with us today for this really interesting webinar on understanding the direct-to-consumer strategy for fashion brands. We have with us today Harish Nikanti, founder and CEO of WAF Shoes. A little about himself, I think he has a tremendous amount of experience in the retail fashion footwear industry, especially with the DTC model. He started his career with Track Shoes, where he rose to be the Director of Operations and Business Development. With about 8 years stint there, he moved on and launched his own brand, WAF Shoes, which was launched in 2015, and with an aim to fill in the gap for premium, high fashion, genuine leather footwear for men, women, and kids, and at affordable prices. They offer a range of products from loafers, sandals, clean cut slippers, Oxfords to boots. So do check out their collection. They've been able to create a strong presence online and in select experiential stores as well in India. Thank you, Harish, for joining us. A warm welcome to you. Thank you for taking out the time today. Yeah, I think... Yes.
Thank you so much, Panisha. Thank you for the lovely introduction, and thank you for having me, first of all, and hope everyone is doing well and keeping safe at home. And yeah, it's a pretty unpredictable time right now, and I think everyone's just hoping that things get much better and we can all get back to our normal routines.
Absolutely, yes. I think we can't just wait to actually get back to what was normal or what is known as normal. Definitely, yeah. Yes. I think we can quickly dive in, Harish. I think, why don't you start with telling us a little about the WAF journey and how have you been able to scale up using the DTC strategy?
Absolutely. So my career started at Track Shoes, where I started working in the business development and operations department. And most of our clients being based in Europe, had a good sense of what they were expecting in terms of design, functionality, and the end product in general, and how they market it. So I did work at, I still am a part of Track Shoes, but I launched WAF in 2015 with the sole aim to sort of provide that sort of functionality and quality for the Indian market, especially in the women's footwear segment, because I did see that that's a niche where we can actually, build a brand over there. And we started off with women and kids footwear in 2015. And in 2017, we did launch a line for men as well, because there were a lot of men who wanted the same thing as well. As we went on about our journey, we realized that there are a lot of people who want good quality footwear at reasonable prices, which last for a good amount of time. And yeah, it's been about 5 years. It's been an amazing journey. It's been very challenging. It's been very giving as well. I've learned a lot on this journey. And yeah, so like you rightly said, we started off with a marketplace module where we started off on websites like your Flipkart, your Amazon, all of that. And then we slowly shifted into a D2C model, focusing more on our own website and focusing more on brand building rather than only sales. And yeah, last year, in fact, we started our first experience studio in Bangalore in the Forum Mall in Whitefield. That's been a great experience also. It's been an eye-opener as to how you can sort of mitigate the challenges that e-com possesses. And yeah, it's been an amazing journey and no complaints so far.
That's great to hear, Harish. I think before we move on, just a quick note, guys. All of you who have questions, please feel free to leave them on the chat box, and we'll be taking them towards the end of the session. Yeah, Harish, I think my first question, I thought, just overall footwear market, like we're seeing there are, shifts in buying behaviors, especially with the fashion retail brands, right? They're moving into a lot of e-commerce. So how do you think, the footwear market has changed with the e-commerce model coming in?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing which I would like to point out, especially this is relevant mainly for footwear and apparel. I think giving focus to size and fitting is very, very important, because 30%, 30 to 35% of online returns for footwear is due to size fits, basically, because people are not aware of their size or they order the wrong size. So I think educating the customer about giving them as much as information as possible about what size would fit you, what are the conversions in centimeter, inches, and what sort of fits you offer, whether you're offering narrow fits, regular fits, large fits. I think that's really, really important for the customer, because you have to understand that they are shopping online, and the only way they're going to judge your product or judge what might fit them is based on the information you give them. So I would say giving customers good amount of information is very crucial to getting the return rate on the lower side of things. And I would also say that the footwear industry and apparel industry, a lot of customers have also started involving more conscious decisions. Like, a lot of them want to buy more sustainable products, something which is environmentally friendly, something which uses less packaging. So I think that's also a really important point that we've been focusing on the last couple of years, to reduce packaging material, to provide very minimalistic and very apt packaging, where there's no wastage. So a lot of our boxes are also repurposed into other things where you can store stuff, and we encourage customers to do that as well.
Right. That's interesting, Harish. I think, yeah, definitely, size and the quality definitely does matter. And when it comes to purchasing like goods like footwear, I think we definitely look into this. And when you're talking about sustainability, I think that's definitely a trend that's picking up. I think people are becoming more conscious of, what they're using or how they're using it. So yeah, it's great to hear that, brands are actually consciously even taking that decision in their packaging, for example, right? Which is great. I think talking about sustainability also, another thing is DTC has sort of emerged to be as a sustainable alternative to retail strategy, right? Especially with the post-COVID scenario. So what do you think? Do you think this trend is going to accelerate further even once sort of the dust settles? And if you have any, since a lot of these traditional retail brands are now moving, making a shift into DTC, would you have any tips for them? What should they, in terms of infrastructure, or what would be their cost-effective way to sort of scale for them?
Well, to answer your question, I think that this whole pandemic situation, I feel it would help getting exposure to the brand, but I don't think in terms of sales you're going to exponentially increase sales, because it is a very unprecedented situation where people are not sure, and people, a lot of loss in jobs as well is creating a lot of panic in people, and people don't want to spend on things which are not essential at the moment right now. So with that being said, there is definitely a lot of people are exploring new brands, are using the internet at home more for leisure. So in terms of like putting your brand out there, giving them information about your brand building in general, there's a lot of scope right now. But in terms of sales, I feel it will take a little time for things to stabilize and for people to get back into the market, feel confident of buying footwear. And also you should understand, buying footwear online also poses a lot of challenges. A lot of people say that, they're not comfortable without touching, feeling, trying it on. And these are things that people will slowly take. I mean, I think after they order a couple of times, they will get used to the fact that you can return, you can exchange, you can get a refund if possible, if you need. And yes, just to answer your question, it is, I think it will accelerate brand building, but I'm not too sure about accelerating in the next few months in terms of sales per se. And to come to your second question regarding tips to go start off with the direct to customer approach, I would say the first and foremost thing is build a brand persona. Understand what your brand is, who are you targeting, what are the people who might buy your brand, what do they do, what do they not like. So building a different persona, building a couple of personas would really help in defining your target audience. So I would say start off small, build a persona, understand your target audience, start off small with a direct to customer approach by using your social media tools, your Instagram ads, your Facebook ads, your Google shopping ads. I think there's so many resources that you can start off. And then as you go about, you should understand who's buying, who's not buying, and slowly start trimming down the audience who are not buying and start building on the set audiences and leverage that. I think that is a good approach instead of going all out without having a proper plan or proper structure. I think that is a little risky, especially at this point of time.
Absolutely, sure. And in terms of any tips of how they can cost-effective ways of to scale that strategy, I think it's great like to have a persona and then build on that. I think that would be like crucial for every brand. In terms of I don't know, maybe what VAF is doing, or are there any cost-effective ways that brands can look at to scale in the DTC model?
So in my experience, I feel the most cost-effective way to go online with a brand, once you have an idea, once you have the product, once you've got your photography, video sorted out, is to pick a website platform which is simple to use backend, and which sort of accentuates your product, videos, photographs. And I feel platforms such as Shopify and WordPress do allow you to do that without too much of resources in-house. You don't need to have like a tech team per se in-house. When you go open source, like when you do Magento and all the other a little more complex website platforms, I think you do need to have an in-house tech team, or you need to have a tech team which you hire and you need to sort of work with them on a daily basis. So I think to start off with, I would definitely suggest something like Shopify. Get beautiful pictures done, get some videos done, and that is the most cost-effective way to go online. And I would also say that don't penny pinch on getting a good photographer or a good videographer, because I think at the end of the day, people are going to judge your brand and your products based on the pictures and your social media and your captions and all of that. So I think it's a good way to invest and project the best of your brand by getting good photography and videos.
Sure. I think also going back to your point where you said, the footwear industry, like given the whole COVID situation now, it's sort of created slippery grounds, right? Like not sure how many people are going to go out, how many people are really wanting to buy footwear now, given that everyone's at home. So how do you think brands, or especially say footwear brands, could tackle such sort of consumer sentiments and at the same time build brand authenticity online?
I think what is important right now is for brands to also show compassion in terms of like having flexible return policies and also allowing customers to sort of engage with the brand more, understand the brand more. And in general, I feel like, especially when the brand is a new brand, anything which is about 1,000 rupees, I would say becomes a high involvement purchase, which would essentially mean that a customer would not essentially convert or buy a product on the first visit. They would need probably about 10 to 12 visits or 15 visits for them to have confidence in the product, in the brand, and probably look at reviews here and there and come back and buy. So I think that's the brand should keep in mind that, you can't convert on the first visit, and you need to keep building confidence within the customer. You can't just go out there and expect for the customer to convert on your first Google ad or your Facebook ad. It does take time. It doesn't happen overnight. But once you do it, it becomes a regular flow, and it really works well for you.
Sure. Right. I think this was one of the other questions I also had, and I think someone in the crowd also has the same question. Like, how have you, in terms of customer segmentation, how have you gone about for VAF? Is there a particular in terms of personas that you were speaking, what is the customer segmentation that you're looking at? How have you?
To be honest, the first few months or the first 6 months or maybe close to a year, you would be experimenting with different audience sets. You don't know exactly, like you have an idea of what you want your customer base to be, but you end up with a very different result. Like you might think, okay, this person is my customer, this age, works at this occupation. But as you keep playing around with different ad sets, you understand that okay, this is my customer, and it ranges to this person. Say it ranges from a college going 20-year-old to a working professional who's 40-year-old. So you start building like a range of people who might buy your product. And it does take time. You need to have A/B set testings. You need to understand that you need to be patient with it. You can't keep changing your ad sets on a regular basis. I think that was one of the mistakes I did in the initial phases where I got really, I got worried in the first few weeks. It wasn't working out. And I kept tweaking with the ads, the ad demographics and all of that. And that didn't really do well because every time you tweak it, Facebook or Instagram or Google optimizes. They take time to optimize the ads and show to the right people. So my advice would be is do your due diligence, understand who your target audience is and give it some time. Don't rush into it and don't panic. If it doesn't happen in 2 weeks, it might be even that there could be times where there is a lull in the e-com market and it takes time. So my advice would be patient and monitor on a regular basis. That's what I would say.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the data that we give to Facebook, it obviously takes time to, sort of get used to understanding what your metrics and what your consumers are. So then getting that information and then definitely, I think any business being patient would be the biggest virtue in whatever we do for sure. I think like you said, right, it's one thing, like especially with the DTC thing, it's one thing to sort of acquire a customer, which requires patience, which requires you to constantly keep monitoring things. But how does a retail fashion brand, build brand experiences and relations with their customers so that they could sustain those customers and truly actually grow? And if there are any insights from VAF, things that you've done in order to build that, would be great to hear that as well.
Yeah. So let me touch on the whole customer retention aspect. I think it's really important that, the people who buy from you, who've shown that confidence and trust, is to follow up with them on a regular basis and see whether they've enjoyed the product, if you can improve in certain ways. So as a brand, what we used to do for customers who would buy a product, we would give them first we would give them like an email, like a survey in a couple of weeks, asking them how the buying process was, whether they enjoyed the process, whether it was tedious, whether the shipping was in proper condition when it came to them, was the shipping guy, did he call the person before delivering? So these are certain statistics that we get back and we try and improve on that aspect. And as per the product, we send out an automatic mailer within 3 months of the product being bought. And that survey essentially includes how the product is fared in those 3 months, whether they like it, whether they're happy with the comfort, the fit, would they recommend to their friends. And we sort of get back those statistics and we work on it and we try and get better. So that's something that I would recommend. I strongly emphasize on like speaking to your customers as much as possible, understanding what you could improve, because at the end of the day, they're going to be your buying crowd and you need to pay a lot of attention as to why they bought your product over so many other alternatives. You see hundreds of ads on your Facebook and your Instagram nowadays. So what made you different from them? I think it's good to know from a different perspective as well, why they chose you over XYZ.
Right, sure. Yeah, it's crucial to create that differentiation, that very strong positioning in the market, especially when it comes to fashion, right? Because it's a extremely competitive market and we have like a lot of established brands, right? What I was saying is the whole startup culture, right? Like today, a lot of new brands are coming into the scenario and, this whole startup culture is sort of picking up. Do you think in the current scenario, it would you recommend a startup to implement the DTC model, and how should they go about with it?
Yeah, so my short answer to that would be yes. I think it's a great way to start your business. It again depends on the motive of the brand, whether you want immediate sales, whether you want only sales, is that your motive, or whether you want a long-term brand building approach. So I think if you want if your priority is only sales, then I would suggest go with a mixed model where you have marketplaces and your DTC direct to customer approach. You can choose your marketplaces. You have your Amazons, your Flipkarts. So I think that is a good way if you want only sales. But if you want a long-term brand building approach, I would suggest a D2C model, because essentially it's really valuable because you get customer data, and it also gives you control over what you put on your website, what the customer is engaging with. And it gives you a lot more control and security in that sense that, people, like for people who are finicky about how they want their brand to be portrayed, I think D2C is a great way to also set you apart from the number of brands which are available online.
Right. Yeah, I think also I think a lot of them have also asked this question, in a scenario where a lot of brands, like when you're talking about Amazon, Myntra, and, a lot of these brands are adopting the deep discounting strategies, right? It's a very competitive market and everyone wants to make sales, and therefore, like big discounts, the big discount sales that happen. So how would a startup or, the newer brands that come in, how can they sort of survive in this game? How can they play around in this game and still, grow and scale?
Right. So it is a really complicated situation, because you can't really compare and compete with Amazon and Flipkart in terms of discounting, because you should understand, like, your Myntra, your Amazons and Flipkart, sometimes they're not selling like the current year's or the current season stock. They're selling last season stock, a stock from a year before. And I would suggest that, don't really compete. Don't really worry about what their strategy is, because as a brand, you want to build your own structure. You want to build the way if you want to build a premium brand, I think it works differently. If you want to build a mass brand, it works differently. But my suggestion would be is to have your own structure, your own schedules for discounting. Don't go overboard. Don't get carried away, and don't get worried. Okay, fine, Amazon's giving 50%. I should probably give 50 as well, because you don't want to be in that game at all. Because for a long-term approach, it's not good, and people automatically start relating your brand to a discounted brand. And they also expect a discount. Whenever they're on the website, they would expect a discount or they wouldn't buy. So there have been a lot of times where people come online and even though products are on sale, they're at full price, they would ask for a discount. But I think it's good to have like a strict phase where you discount, where you don't discount. And that's my suggestion. Don't get carried away by the discounting offered by an Amazon or a Flipkart or a Myntra. Just stick to your own schedule, stick to your brand character, your brand ethos, and you'll be fine. It is a long wait. It is a long game. You need to wait it out. Sometimes you don't really get a huge customer base overnight. So, but the customers who come to you will be loyal customers for sure. And just keep building on that and focus on acquiring new customers as well. And if your product and service is good, there's no reason why they won't come back to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Harish. I think, I have seen a lot of your collection previously when we were, when we worked together, I think. And I remember you saying that, design is very crucial. Like what the footwear that you come up with, it's for premium quality, and you actually spend a lot of time in actually the design of it and the quality of it, right? So when it comes to these fashion retail, a lot of people do look for quality, but there's also somewhere a sense of, affordability. How do you balance the act, like as a brand, whether it's online or in your offline model? How do you actually balance that act?
Sorry, Panisa, I didn't get your question because there was a bit of a lag. Could you repeat that?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Right. So what I was trying to ask you is that I know that as a brand, VAF takes quality and design very seriously. There's also a question of affordability, right? Which again is your brand ethos. So how do you sort of balance that act in terms of customers? I'm sure there is a premium range where customers are looking for the premium range, but they're still looking at affordability. And especially when it comes to online, there's so much to choose from. So how, as a brand, do you balance the act between minimal design and premium quality and affordability?
So at the initial stages, when we first started off in 2015, 2016, we were really, we had a very narrow collection. So our collection was mainly your loafers, moccasins, sneakers, mainly closed footwear for women, which were slightly on the higher side, I would say. We didn't focus too much on open footwear, which are your slippers, sandals, and we realized in a year or so, we realized that that is a major chunk of the market. A lot of people, especially in the southern part of India, most of them buy open footwear for like daily use. And I think that is something that we realized that, okay, we should come up with something which is functional, well designed, priced at the right price. So we started manufacturing open footwear, which weren't leather, at lower price points, so that we could cater to different audiences as well. I think that was an approach that we decided to go with to get into a different market as well. And I think it worked out really well because we did see a lot of sales in that category, in the open footwear category, where people are willing to pay about 1,200 to 1,500 to buy a pair of slippers or sandals for daily use. So I think that worked really well. So I think initially focus on your core products and then slightly tweak it around once you understand how the market is reacting, how your customers are reacting. Then expand your product portfolio and see what the market wants as well. And I would say that would be my strategy.
Right. Right. I think before I actually move on with the questions on chat, I think just one last perspective from your side. Any perspective on the current e-commerce trends? What do you think is going to grow and something that would really be useful for the DTC model?
I think a trend that has been very relevant in the last 3 years is mobile shopping. I think the shift from desktop and laptop shopping to people buying on their mobile phones has been tremendous. In fact, now for us also, we've seen like a 80-20 split, 80% being mobile phone shoppers and 20% being like tablets or desktop or laptop shoppers. And with that sort of a change, you should understand that 80% of the buying crowd is actually browsing on their mobile phones. So tweaking and enhancing the mobile experience is something which is very important. I think that's what we did as well. We made sure that our website was optimized for all mobile devices, and there was a good customer experience. At the end of the day, a customer doesn't want to spend 10 minutes in the checkout process. I think that's another really important process to understand as well. While doing a sitemap, you should understand that a customer wants to check out as soon as possible, and the longer it takes, the longer there's more chance of a customer dropping out and having abandoned carts. So in that sense, I would say try and keep it as simple as possible, with relevant information at different checkpoints. And the faster the checkout process, the better it is for you. And I would say another trend. Is more of an expectation. I think companies like Amazon has spoiled the Indian customers as well. Being the gold standard in e-commerce, I think ordering on Amazon, you essentially order tonight and you get your product by tomorrow. And everyone gets used to the fact that that is the norm. You know, you get your product in 1-2 days. But if you don't have a massive infrastructure with many people working at the back end, it's not going to be possible to have dispatches on a very quick basis. It does take a few days. It takes about 2 to 3 days to ship out. So we have a 24-hour dispatch policy where we dispatch products within 24 hours. But it does take about 2 to 3 days, depending on where they're located, for it to reach the customer. So I think the trend that Amazon has set in terms of brilliant customer service is something that everyone's trying to follow and adapt to. It's not easy at all, but we're all trying to get there, trying to be as efficient as possible, trying to respond to customers as soon as possible, trying to give them answers, trying to explain to them how they can return their product, how they can select another size. So yeah, I would say being on point with your customer service is as important as selling, because everyone wants to get good customer service at the end of the day.
Fair, Harish. I think, you brought this up, but I think there's also a question related to this on the chat from Amol. He says people don't prefer to buy from new or unknown online stores with Amazon, Flipkart charges, advertisement expenses, delivery and return expenses. It's difficult to make any profit. So how did you go through this stage?
So again, you should understand your target audience. Is your customer an audience that is going to go buy on Amazon or Flipkart, or is a customer ready to buy on your website directly? So you should have a USP or something which is different from, which sets you different from the others. That's why I was talking about how you can differentiate in terms of your product line or expand your product portfolio to attract a different market altogether. It's not easy, like I said before, it's not easy competing with an Amazon or Flipkart, but I feel it is possible to give good customer service because you don't have hundreds and thousands of people coming to you, writing emails to you, asking for like a solution to this. So the few customers that you have, like the few customer queries that you have on a regular basis, I think it's really good to deal with them on a personal basis and try and sort it out as soon as possible. I think that also gives them a confidence that, okay, fine, these guys did a good job, so why should I go to an Amazon or something like that? I'd rather go directly and buy to them. And small, so what we did is we did add in a customized shoe bag for the customers who buy on our own website, which customers on, say, a Flipkart or a Myntra would not get. I think small incentives like this makes them come to your own website and buy rather than going there. Small personalizations like, writing, engraving on your shoe and stuff like that. That's something that Amazon or Flipkart can't do. So I think this is where you can really stand out to customers.
Absolutely, yes. I think personalization, people are willing to pay a little premium for that. But definitely, that's what sort of makes your brand also stand out in the sort of crowd. I think that a question on supply chain, I think, what are your thoughts? Like, how is the supply chain panning out for the D2C brands? Arnab has this question.
Okay, when you talk about supply chain, are you talking about right now during the pandemic, or are you talking about in general supply chain? How do you work out the logistics between delivering your products? And
I think it would be for the current scenario, right? Because I think with the China ban and all of that, I think there's been a little chaos in the supply chain in terms of the current scenario.
Yeah. Well, if you manufacture your own products, it's not going to be that difficult in terms of procuring the right materials and making your products. If you're sourcing directly from Vietnam or China or Cambodia, it's going to be a little difficult because India is really strong with leather products, manufacturing of leather products. And I would say China has China's great in terms of PU or synthetic products. And that's why people go to them, because of the pricing advantage. You get them for much cheaper and you get better quality PU in China, but that's slowly changing. A lot of customers, a lot of manufacturers in India are now focusing on developing PU collection. Also, I would say you don't have to worry about the import duty from China, your shipping timelines. So I would say there are definitely suppliers in India for most products. And if you look around, I'm sure you'll find the right person. And in terms of supply chain, in terms of after you, in product logistics, I would say definitely employ like a multi-channel approach. I wouldn't say go with only one vendor. I think having like a guy like a Blue Dart and an India Post would be advantageous, because India Post has an amazing reach, but Blue Dart has really, really good service. So I think it's good to have multiple vendors and serve. I mean, if the Blue Dart guy delivers to Bombay in 2 days with a better, with more efficiency, I think you'd rather use Blue Dart. And some places like in Jammu and Kashmir or Srinagar or wherever it is, India Post can reach them better than Blue Dart because they don't have the reach Blue Dart does.
Right. Another very interesting question, I think, about videos from Rishabh. Do you think video selling is going to pick up in the fashion and beauty category, given now that people are going to be shopping a lot more from home? Do you think video is going to pick up? And I think there's also another related question, which is about AR in the fashion domain. Is that something that you see also picking up?
Yeah, so I was just going to bring up the whole AR topic. I think augmented reality is the next new thing. there are many websites. I think Myntra does it and Nike does it. So they let you see how you look on a particular shoe. And I think it's a great way for a customer to sort of visualize how the product will look, because we've also realized that, customers like seeing a styled product rather than, like, when you have product pictures, like, those white background catalog images, it does get a little boring. The customer needs to see how the product is styled, what you can wear it with, what it goes well with. And I think that's very important as well. I think video is probably the hottest thing right now in terms of video selling. A lot of brands right now are using video ads to sell on your Facebook or your Instagram, and they do really well. But at the same time, it's really expensive because you need to invest in a lot of video clips, and you need to take them in really high quality and have models, and you have to have like makeup artists, and it is a big investment. But I feel if you can spend that money, it's a great investment because you definitely can scale up using video selling. And when it comes to AR, if you do have the funds, I would say definitely try and get an app which sort of allows your customer to see how they feature on any of their products, whether it's your shoes or whether it's your clothes. I think it's a great way. It's fun for the customer as well, for them to see how they look in the particular shoe or their clothes. So I would say it's definitely the hottest thing right now, AR.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of brands are starting to pick up on AR, starting to sort of use that to their advantage. Even video, yes, there has been a spike in terms of like even YouTube, right? Their video does sell better, which is why a lot of brands are starting to pick up on the video trend as well. I think there's another question.
Yeah, I mean, if you see the last couple of years.
Yeah, go ahead, Harish.
Yeah, the last couple of years, a lot of high-end brands as well, they've replaced their traditional static banner images to video, like video ads where they portray their products or what they're trying to sell. So I think it does show that video is a place to invest in right now.
Yes, right. Another question, which is, what are the best online channels for brand building for DTC fashion brands? Any other online channels that you recommend for DTC fashion brands?
When you talk about channels, are you talking about like your social media channels, or are you talking about like selling channels?
I think it could be both.
Okay, I'll cover both. So
yeah.
I would say for a fashion brand, because you need to be really visual. People want to see what you're talking about, what your products are. I think Instagram would be my number one pick. I feel Facebook has dropped in the last couple of years. I would say Instagram and maybe even Pinterest to an extent is really good in terms of getting a product visual and getting people to look at your product and share images and get a feel of your brand essentially. And when it comes to selling, I would say more Google Shopping works really well. Your search ads are very precise, and it targets the people who you want it to, and you don't have to spend too much money on it as well. So I think it works out really well. And yeah, someone asked if Pinterest works. Pinterest, it does work for the Indian market, but not in terms of sales conversions. I would say in terms of brand building, it's really good. Google display ads definitely helped us in the last couple of years. I think getting the hang of it is the main thing. And after you get the hang of it, it works out really well. Another approach I would like to mention also is having a mixed model approach, like having your online ads, like your Google, your Instagram, your Facebook going out, but also having like real life influencers, real life bloggers talk about your products. And when I say real life influencers, bloggers, I would strongly suggest quality over quantity. Don't think that, okay, just because XYZ has 50,000 followers, they're really good. Go with the ones who are reputed, who people talk about, who are featured in fashion magazines, who have a reputation. It is a little more expensive, but when they blog about you, when they tweet about you, it does really make an impact. And we've seen a huge impact in terms of blogger collaborations and stylist collaborations. So in fact, we had a lot of stylists who we had collaborated with in the last couple of years, and we've got our products placed with really good celebrities in Bollywood, in the South as well. So I think it works really well. Having a multi-channel approach is really important to get your brand built as well as to sell. So.
Yeah, I think there's another, how does Pinterest help in brand building? But I think you sort of covered that question. Another question, which is, how do you see Indian startups playing at a global level? What's the biggest advantage we should play?
So the challenge that we faced on like international shipping or in getting a brand international is the whole logistics part of it. Essentially, being a footwear brand, we have to expect returns in terms of size, fits, and all of that. So that becomes a huge problem because when a customer buys a product, if they do have a problem with the size fit, it's pretty much impossible to do an exchange with an international shipment because it's very expensive to ship a product internationally. And I would suggest, unless you have like a huge customer base in a particular location abroad, I would say don't go for it. But if you do have, if you feel optimistic about it, I would say go try and use one of the Amazon FBA fulfillments in that particular country. I think Amazon fulfillment, say for example, if you're doing it in the US, I think Amazon US does give you that option as an Indian seller to ship your products directly to the Amazon warehouse where they do the selling, the dispatching, the returns, and you get the dashboard of the statistics on what's sold, what's not sold. It is an expensive way to go about it, but if you really want to test the waters, this is a good way to do it.
Right. Yeah, there's another question, which is quite an interesting question from Tawfiq. Could you sort of give us some examples of how have you approached your target audience?
So like I said, it's been evolving. Like it's not like you have a set target audience. So as you keep growing, you keep understanding different customers, different segments that are buying your product. And like I said, the main thing is to keep a core brand persona and keep building on that. Understand who are the main people who are buying it, who are the second best people buying, and then understand how you're going to market to them. What is the most efficient way to target your ads to them? And yeah, that's what I would say to that.
Any examples from VAF that you'd like to share, like of any?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. So we tied up with this blogger, one of the top bloggers in India called Lavandi Adabags. They're based in, we knew that the target audience who follows them is exactly what our target crowd is, the buying crowd essentially. There were women from 18 to about 40, 45. And I think we sort of gauged that and we started promoting with them. We developed our own capsule collection with them as well, which really helped us in the long run. But yeah, I would say it is a trial and error approach. You need to keep having different audience sets, seeing what works, what doesn't work, and keep building your brand persona.
Right. Also, I think somewhere related, Kavya wants to know what do you think of brand collaborations? Does it really help in the whole brand growth?
Yes, I would say brand collaborations definitely help in growing if you pick the right brand to collaborate with. I would say it's essential to understand how the other brand who you're collaborating with is going to complement your brand. And there should also not be like a conflict of interest in terms of having the same products or the same lines of products over there. So I would say, like I mentioned earlier, the whole blogger collaboration it works out really well because bloggers essentially know how to style products. They know what are the current trends. They know what's in right now. So I think it's really important to understand who you're collaborating with and yeah, see if their sort of brand philosophy matches with yours, whether their brand design philosophy as well. Because see, a minimalistic brand can't go with a brand which is loud, like in terms of design. I feel that won't be a match. I think these are a few things that you need to look at when you're collaborating with a brand to make sure that it goes well.
Absolutely, Harish. I think I think you mentioned that influencers is something that is really brands are picking up, and collaborations are a great way to actually sort of share that brand philosophy and ethos and get your product out there, right? It's a belief when you're looking at an influencer doing it. It's sort of a belief that hey, if they are doing it, it should be like somewhere that matches my taste as well. Yes, another question from Saru. In the very initial stages, I think it's, how important is it to use your offline network? Can the online audience be used in isolation?
That's a great question, actually. This is something I forgot to mention as well. So while growing the brand, we also did a lot of offline pop-up stores all over India. So we did pick locations like Bombay, Bangalore, most of the metro cities. And we had pop-up stores where people could actually see, experience the product firsthand and order over there. And that really plays a huge impact because when you're completely online, the biggest challenge is the customer not being able to see the quality and you not being able to justify your price for the quality. So having like an offline network and an offline module does play a huge role. And for us too, we did have, so initially in 2017, we launched with about 8 to 10 boutique stores all over India, where multi-brand stores where we could stock our products, where we saw the product merging with their clothes. And I think that really helped in terms of getting the brand out there, and people started recognizing the brand even more. And that essentially converts to online sales, because when a customer goes offline, when they see your product in the store and they like it, and if they buy it once, I'm sure for convenience sake, they would probably buy it on your website the second time, or also for the fact that you might have a better price online than you would have offline. So I would strongly suggest offline and online approach if you can.
Right. I think in an earlier question on, I think it's more related to VAF, but is your brand available on Amazon and Flipkart? If yes, why? If no, why? Has that been like a conscious decision? Yes.
We were available on Amazon and Flipkart for the first 2-3 years. And we decided to sort of focus more on our own website, because I felt like engaging and getting that own customer data, our main aim wasn't to sell huge numbers. It was to satisfy whatever numbers we're getting. We wanted to make sure that those customers are satisfied. And via Amazon and Flipkart, you don't have control in terms of dispatches, your quality, QC, because sometimes it's getting delivered from their warehouse, or it's going to multiple places before it gets delivered. So we don't have a control on that. So we decided to focus more on our online, our own website store, vaf.in. So it does take some time to build customers coming into your store, build some traffic. And so once you start building traffic, it's really important to retarget the customers who are coming into your website, because whoever's coming in is coming in looking at an ad on Instagram or Google or word of mouth. So they're obviously interested in the product or brand in some sort of way. So it's really important for you to sort of follow up by retargeting. But retargeting, when I say retargeting, it doesn't mean spamming them with different ads, like saying, buy now, buy now. It's talking more about the brand, highlighting features. Okay, say for example, highlight features like memory foam cushioning, durability, what kind of materials we use, what are the working conditions we manufacture, and those kind of things. So these are the kind of things customers nowadays want to know. And I mean, all customers are super savvy now, tech savvy. They understand how to buy online. They understand what differentiates a brand from a different brand. And it's really important to clarify and have a stance as a brand. Okay, this is what I am, this is what I'm offering, and be clear with it and be open and honest about it. I feel if your delivery timeline is 5 days, please mention it's 5 days, and don't say 3 days and deliver in 5 days. I think that's what sort of also annoys a customer, when you sort of overpromise and underdeliver. I think that's something you should not do. Be honest and candid about what you can deliver to the customer.
Right. Vishal wants to know, do you think a lot of brands will downsize and move to a more omni-channel approach? I think this is somewhere related to your previous answer as well.
So I would say, like I said again, it depends on what the focus is, whether the brand is looking for primarily sales or whether it's a long-term brand building approach. I feel in terms of inventory, people would come back to an omni-channel approach because they don't have to build too much of inventory to sell on your Amazon, your Flipkart, your XYZ portals. And having an omni-channel approach allows you to understand your sales and allows you to rebuild your stock. I think replenishing stock is as important as selling them, because there's no point putting out ads out there on your Facebook and Instagram when you don't have enough stock and inventory and when you don't know when you're going to replenish them. So I would say, I think a lot of people would focus more on, I wouldn't say they would quit Amazon and Flipkart, but I feel they would focus more on an omni-channel approach. If their main goal is to build their brand and also have sales in the same way.
Right. I hope that answers your question, Vishal. I think another question from Vikas is about the scope of drop shipping in fashion with suppliers from Chennai. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, so Chennai being a metro city and a hub, I think there are a lot of vendors who who provide services for drop shipping. And I think a lot of brands also don't want to involve themselves. Like when you're starting off, you don't want to focus on too many things. You want to focus mainly on acquiring sales and delivering a good product. So when it comes to that, I think it's really important to outsource to someone who can do better than you. If you feel you can do the dispatching, the delivering, and following up better, then I would suggest keep it in-house. But if not, I would strongly suggest having a third-party company who drop ships for you, at least in the initial stages, so you can focus on the brand, on the product.
Yeah, fair enough. Another question is about, I think this is quite an interesting question. How does one allocate resources across your product? That's your design, brand building, as well as investments in website, supply chain, etc. How do you sort of allocate resources?
So the first thing is, when you delegate work to someone, make sure that you leave that work for them. You don't keep butting in and don't mix teams. So that's something that I try to avoid, like having people play multiple roles. Like say, for example, someone playing, someone in the design, like focusing on the sales part of it, or someone in the design focusing on the after sales customer support. So I think it's really important that people stick to the domains that they're really strong in and focus on what best they can do for you, rather than mixing everything up. I strongly feel that everyone should be delegated with the right work.
Right. I think he also wants to know, in terms of spends, how can we allocate resources?
In terms of spends for, I'm sorry,
resources across your product portfolio, your brand building, marketing, and your other investments. How do you go about? Yeah.
So you're talking about the online spends?
Yes.
Like your ad spends?
Yes. I guess yes.
Okay, so I'll just give you an example of how we allocate our spends. So there are certain months in the year where we know that the products are going to sell much better. Say, for example, holiday season, pre-Diwali, in South India, pre-Pongal time. So these are times where people start purchasing more clothes and accessories. So we allocate more funds during that time. And during summer, usually the summer break between June, July, we see a lull in sales. So we don't invest too much in terms of conversion ads, but we do spend a bit of ads in brand building and talking about the brand more during that phase of the year. So yeah, we focus more on few months in a year where we add more budget for sales.
Yeah, I think during the season times is when like your budgets would obviously like go higher in terms of promoting your. Absolutely.
Because there's more appetite. There's more appetite to buy during that time as well. So you'd rather spend that money when people are willing to buy rather than when people are traveling or when they have other commitments. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, fair enough. I think we have about time to take maybe one or two questions more. So I think there's another question on how do you manage the issues of leftover stocks across seasons?
Sorry, it was lagging. I couldn't hear you.
How do you manage the issues of leftover stocks across seasons?
Yeah, so so stock from previous seasons, we try and discount them sometimes to sell them quickly. We don't deep discount them too much, and sometimes we also keep the stock. We don't really do anything with it, and during the sale period, we deep discount it to sort of liquidate it. I think stock management is one of the most important things, especially for an e-commerce brand. When you have a physical product, it's really important to manage your stock and understand what your best sellers are, what doesn't move so much. So it's important to keep monitoring what sells well, what doesn't sell well, and discount them accordingly.
Right. I think there's one previous questions on. Just trying to find that. Yes. In terms of psychological traits, what do you think in general do customers expect out of a fashion brand?
I think first and foremost, customers are really wary about when they see a product online. They want to make sure that what they receive and what they see on the product, on your website, on any of the social media images they match, because there are times where customers find that the products online don't match the products in person, and that's something which is really important. And we, as a brand, we try our best to make sure that the products replicate what is being manufactured. So we represent it with images or videos in the best way possible, which is accurate. So when a customer receives the product, they're not disappointed. They know that, okay, this is what they picked up online and this is what they've got. So I think that's really important to showcase what the actual product is. And yeah, so you were saying?
No, yeah. So I think in terms of psychological traits, what do you think consumers actually expect from a fashion brand? What is it that, in your opinion, what is it that they expect to see?
Yeah. So like I said, the whole honesty part of it, like, being able to portray what exactly you're selling, having clear-cut guidelines. Say, for example, if you have a return policy for 30 days, be clear whether it's 30 days from the time you receive the product or 30 days from the time you've ordered the product, because having that clarity in your terms and conditions is really important. Because I've seen a lot of customers, especially new customers, the first thing they do is they go on to the terms and conditions, the shippings and returns policies, and they go through that properly before making a purchase decision. So it's really important to have a clear-cut approach to all your policies, so that it's simple for the customer to convert.
Right. Right, Harish, I think we have just about that much time to take up any more questions. But I think if anyone has more questions, please feel free to reach out to us, and we can probably have Harish answer them later and send them to you. Yeah, I think thank you so much, Harish. Some really insightful thoughts on the whole DTC angle. But before we leave you, I think any parting thoughts or any sort of tips you have for people who are just entering into this model or just starting up their business or brand or launching their brand?
Firstly, thank you so much for having me. I hope it's been useful for you guys, whoever's listening. And yeah, so I would say if someone wants to start an e-commerce business or an online business, I would say don't hesitate. If you have a good product, if you have a good way to market it, I think those are your main things that you need to take care of. And these days you have so many different solutions to get online very quickly, very fast, and very cost effectively. And there's so many people out there who can mentor you, whether you reach out to them on LinkedIn or Facebook. I'm sure a lot of people are happy to help you with their process, their journey. So feel free, don't hesitate to reach out to anyone. Don't feel shy. I think it's good to reach out to people and get their advice and their story on how they went about things. And yeah, I think it's a great time to be online. It's a great time to be on e-commerce right now as well. And yeah, like you see, you get more and more customers on a daily basis getting smartphones in India, and more people have access to buying goods online. So I think it's a great place to be online in India.
Absolutely, Harish. I think, like you said, it's never, it's never actually a better time. It's the best time to be in the e-commerce business now, especially with the geo entrance and, a sort of mobile growing. Definitely, yes. So thank you so much, Harish, for joining us. And thank you everyone who have been able to join us today, and hope this was a useful session for all of you. And best of luck, Harish, with WAF as well.
Thank you so much, Panisa, and thank you, Srinidhi, for making this happen. And all the best to you guys as well, and stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks. Bye.